friends, welcome or welcome back to this channel. We're on Pages and Pearls. My name is Hannah. It's been a while since I recorded the last episode, so I'm a bit rusty, it feels like, with intros and everything, but I'm happy to be back, and also welcome back to you if you've been here before, and thanks for coming back after me not uploading for such a long time. But yeah, I'm excited to get into things, to talk a bit about knitting things and about some updates, and just get cozy, grab your knitting project or whatever you keep yourself busy with, or I'm also just obviously happy if you just watch. As a general intro, my name is Hannah. I live in London. I'm originally from Germany and I work here as a researcher, and I'm also a writer, more on that later. And in my free time, I like to knit. In the last months, not so much. I think one of the main reasons that I didn't upload for such a long time was actually that I fell into a little bit of a hole in terms of motivation when it came to knitting, so I didn't really work on much, so there was also not so much content to create or like things to talk about, hence the silence here. But over the past weeks I've slowly dug my way out of the lack of motivation, let's say, and now I'm very excited about all things yarn and fiber again, so I thought I'd grab the opportunity and also record a new episode, because there are a few things that I can talk about, and let's just jump right into them. The first thing that I can talk about is the Slipover that I actually finished before I stopped having any motivation to knit. So this is the Friday Slipover V-neck by Petite knit, and I knit this in January. I believe I finished it at the end of January or beginning of February. I think beginning of February, and I knit this as a kind of mini knit along with Sarah's Hand Makes. She was much faster at it than me, but it was very fun to kind of compare where we were at and figure out our, I don't know, yarn choices, gauge, sizing, everything. I always love these kind of mini knit alongs with someone that I met in the knitting community, and you end up talking a little bit more through it. I don't know, I just find it very rewarding, and whenever I wear this one I think of her. So definitely also check out her videos. This is knit in Knitting for Olive Merino and Nordic Beach, and soft silk mohair in colorway powder, I believe. It's kind of a new color for me. I don't wear a lot of like beige, greyish things, but I knit a hat for a gift at Christmas in this combination, and I really liked how the fabric turned out and how the color marled, and thought I would like to have a garment myself in that color, something kind of more neutral, and I think this color also works for me. I'm always a bit skeptical with sort of like beige, brown colors, because I think they make me look a bit washed out. But this one, I like the way it makes me look. If you think it makes me washed out, then you could keep that thought to yourself. But yeah, I think this combination works actually quite well. And so I knit this in size L, and I went up a needle size. I think I'm a bit of a tighter knitter compared to Petite knit, so I have knit some garments in the needle size that she suggests, and I've gone up a needle size in some, and I think with the going a needle size up, that usually gives me a correct gauge actually. I also went up to size L because I didn't want it to be like too tight fitting, but now that I've been wearing it over a few months, I feel like I could have gotten away with an M as well, because I'm not sure that I like the oversized look of it that much. Well, I mean, I like the look of it, but I think I could have also gone for a smaller one. Especially because, so this is knit in a, oh god, I'm losing my knitting terms, this is scary. It's not rib, it's half rib, what is that called? This is knit in a broken rib stitch. The term completely slipped my mind. Anyways, it's knit in a broken rib stitch, so it does obviously stretch out a little bit, or like grow a little bit after you block it. And it's not as tight, let's say, as a 1x1 rib would be otherwise. So I think I could have gotten away with a size M, but I'm also happy with the way it looks. I'm just gonna get up so you can see it. So I did knit it a bit shorter than was suggested because I wanted to be able to, well, tuck it in, but also to just wear it as it is and still have it hit kind of like above my hip. I've been wearing this a lot with button downs, but now since the weather has gotten warmer, I also sometimes combine it just with a t-shirt. And I think I'm starting to like slipovers more and more. I knit one about a year ago, and then this is my second slipover, and I feel like I definitely have use for more slipover, like different colors, maybe a different color in my wardrobe. I've been dreaming of a dark kind of navy blue, slightly fuzzy mohair crew neck slipover that's a bit more form-fitting. So maybe this will be in my future. I don't think I would knit it in summer because it doesn't seem like a summer garment to me, but yeah, I want to knit more slipovers because I think they're fun. You don't have to do sleeves. What I will say is that this still felt a bit like a slog sometimes because I'm not the biggest fan of knitting 1x1 rib, and basically every second round of this is 1x1 rib, and then you have all the finishing, like the v-neck took way longer than I would have expected, just because it's a lot of stitches, obviously, because it's quite deep. But I got used to it at some point. I should also say I knit all the ribbing inside out. I started doing this with the garment that I knit prior to this one, which was my Ingrid sweater, and I quite like knitting ribbing inside out because it looks much neater for me. And then I don't have to pay attention to wrapping the yarn anyway to make it look neater, but it's just really doing kind of like a German short row stitch, turning the work, and then you merrily go along knitting your ribbing until you get to the last one, and then I usually turn around and then bind off. If you knit your ribbing inside out, let me know how you do it, if you have any other tricks to it, but in general I would recommend it, especially if you always feel like your ribbing looks much neater from the other side. So I think that's a quite nice way to still get that neat look on the right side of the garment. I think that's basically all I have to say about this garment. Again, could have done a size smaller, but still like it very much, and that's it. And then after this, so as I said, I finished this in February. After this, there was a long period of me, I started knitting a hat, which I'm not going to talk about because it's not really an active whip right now, but I didn't knit for a while, or very sporadically. But then in April, end of March, April, I figured I should maybe give it a go again, and I felt a bit more like it, and I went on a trip to see some of my extended family, let's say, in Spain, and I took a sock with me that I was knitting on. I had knit the first sock previously. I'll show it now. I knit this last year. I think I cast it on actually a year ago. So now it's the 1st of June, and I cast this on my trip last year to Costa Rica, and finished the first sock also that summer. So this was number 1, and now last weekend I finally finished the second one. So this second sock took me like 5 weeks, which I think is quite a lot for a sock, but it's what kind of nursed me slowly back to getting into knitting, so I'm very grateful for that. I'm knitting these socks, or I did knit these socks for my partner, and the yarn, the pattern is basically I just followed the vanilla sock pattern of the Crazy Sock Lady with a few minor adjustments, because I've knit quite a few socks by now that I try to just adjust a few things here and there. So in this case, for example, I picked up a few more stitches at the heel just to allow for a slightly wider kind of, it's not the arch of the foot, but like the connection between the foot and the leg. And I also put in these 3 stripes here at the top, just because I wanted to try out something new. I think, hold them a bit closer, I think I should have maybe spaced them out a bit more. For future reference, I'll probably do that, or maybe it would also look a bit nicer even with a not so variegated main color, that the stripes, I mean, they do stand out, but they could stand out a bit more. So I think I should have done a bit more spacing between them, and then maybe make the stripe 1 row wider as well. I'm not sure, but I still like how they turned out. They're very soft. I used the yarn, I think it's a Hedgehog fiber sock yarn in the colorway Trail. I think this colorway is, or at least when I bought it, it was exclusive to the Argyle yarn shop in Brooklyn. I picked this up last year when I was still living in New York, and then I used some leftover white cream yarn from Cascade, I think it's Cascade Heritage Sock, in the colorway Limestone, which has been my kind of like white contrast color for a lot of socks that I've been knitting in the past year. And yeah, I had a 2x2 rib cuff, and I'm really happy that these socks are now done. They fit him, which is a success, and that's about it. Thank you to these socks for making me feel like knitting again. And that's all the objects that I finished again. So this was before my before my motivation died, and then the other one was when it came back up. But what has truly brought me back to knitting life basically is this scarf, which is a current work in progress. I cast this on Sunday, I think, so a bit under a week ago. This is an Italian summer scarf designed by an Italian knitter, Francesca, who has a great YouTube channel as well, and this is a free design that she released last year, and it's pretty straightforward, and I really like, I wanted to have something simple where I don't have to think too much about the fit or increases, but just something that would start to get me back into the mojo, let's say. And when I was in Oxford for work a few months ago by now, I picked up 2 balls. There's not so much left of it anymore. I picked up these 2 balls of Knitting for Olive Compatible Cashmere because I wanted to try it, and I wanted to have like a small project. So, because I mean, it is a bit more pricey to try out this yarn. And I thought something that I could wrap around my neck, something small, would benefit from such a soft fabric. So I picked up this yarn. It's the colorway Dusty Artichoke, which I think is one of the kind of very popular Knitting for Olive colorways, and I like it very much. And then I was kind of debating between different mini scarves, some from my favorite things knitwear, or I was also considering doing a Sophie scarf. I've done one as a present, so I don't own a Sophie scarf, but something, I don't know, I just wanted something in between that would capture my interest a bit more, and I really like these eyelet rows that the Italian summer scarf has. So that's what I went for. I have to say that I actually enjoy this much more than I enjoyed knitting the Sophie scarf. It is pretty similar in the way it is constructed, so you start at the tip and you have like this I-cord all the way around that you knit along with the sort of main body pattern of the scarf. But then you also have these eyelet rows. I think I can talk a bit more about it here because the pattern is free anyways. So these eyelet rows are super helpful, I think, in just like in kind of counting how many increases or decreases you've already done and how many rows you've done in between to figure out when your next increase or decrease should happen. So I find it actually a much more relaxing and mindless knit than the Sophie scarf, but it looks visually somehow more, I don't know, airy, light, summery. So that's really cool. As you can see, I'm already on the decreases again. At the moment, it's slightly oddly shaped. I feel like so you kind of increase on both sides so that instead of just going out like, kind of like staying flat and then the increases go this way, you kind of go this way. Like a, yeah, I mean, both are a triangle. But for me, I feel like you see the increases more on this side than on the other side, but you see the decreases maybe a bit more on this side. I'm not sure. It looks a bit oddly shaped to me right now, but I think, or I hope, that when I sort of block it and shape it correctly, that this will look less awkwardly shaped. In any case, if it doesn't, it's going to be wrapped around my head and my throat, and then you don't see it too much anyways. But yeah, very much enjoying this. For someone who hasn't been knitting almost at all in the last few months, it's such a success that basically within less than a week I've gotten this far. And it's Saturday midday, so my kind of loose goal, I try not to like put too much pressure on myself, but my loose goal is to maybe finish it this weekend, because that would be really cool that next week I could just wear it. So yeah, I like these kind of tiny scarves. I have made a video about kind of like pattern roundup of tiny scarves before. It's almost a year old, but I think it's still one of my best performing video. And since then, so many new tiny scarf patterns have come out, or I've become aware of more. So I'm thinking of actually doing a version 2.0 to give some extra options, because yeah, they're quite nice. So that's this one. I'll, again, hopefully be able to show it in the next episode when it's done. And also Francesca has some other free patterns up that are scarf, like, or around the neck related. I think she also has like a spring, I don't know if it's a kerchief or if it's a scarf as well, where basically the eyelet rows go a bit in a different direction. And I'm definitely curious to knit more of these. Everything's super well explained. Thank you, Francesca, for bringing me back into knitting. My last work in progress is a top that I cast on yesterday that I've had on my wish list for some time. But last week I went to one of my local yarn shops and saw this gorgeous, gorgeous shade of Gepard. Here we go. Gepard Wild Soft. This is the name. And it's in the colorway, doesn't say, colorway 340. It's this gorgeous, gorgeous raspberry pink. I love it so much. To me it screams summer. And this is a silk merino wool mix, 40% silk, 60% merino wool, and it's a light fingering weight yarn with 240 meters for 50 grams. And I saw this and I was like, okay, I think this is the perfect yarn for the top that I've been wanting to knit, which is, well, you don't see much of it yet, but it is my stitch marker just fell. The Petal Drop Camisole by Florence Miller, who is handmade by Florence here on YouTube. It's a very, very pretty lace stitch that I'm trying to get to focus, that I am very familiar with because I've knit socks like this before. Actually, let me get them. I hope they're not too like weird and dusty right now, but you can see the pattern here a little bit better. This is the pattern, which is super cute, super dainty, and actually not really hard to make, which is great. So these were my first all over lace socks that I knit last winter, and they were actually what got me back into sock knitting after a few months of really not feeling like knitting any socks at all. So I remembered this, and I remembered that I've been wanting to make this top and thought maybe this can also help me on my journey back into knitting more frequently. And so far it's working pretty well, because I cast this on, was it yesterday or maybe the day before? I'm knitting it on 3.25 millimeter needles, so it's a pretty tiny needle project, but something about it is really addictive to me. I think it's just it's a pretty easy pattern most of the time, and then you always have one row where you kind of create this lace stitch that is also pretty easy to memorize. So it's kind of, for me, the perfect blend between, I don't have to look at the pattern, but it's not just stuck in it in the round, so it feels like you're always kind of trying to achieve the next pattern repeat and stuff. So really popcorn knitting for me. I'm very addicting, and I'm very happy about it so far. Obviously I still have quite a lot to go, so this is constructed bottom up. The pattern comes in two options. The main, I think the one that Florence also models on the pattern kind of website and so on, is one that has where you cast on fewer stitches and then you increase at the waist to kind of like shape the bust. But there's also an option to just cast on the correct, like the kind of like full bust amount of stitches from the get-go, which is what I chose, because with the 40% silk in the fabric, I think it's going to be more of a drapey fabric anyways. So I prefer it to be like less negative ease, less shaped to the body, and more like just a nice camisole that kind of falls nicely with. So that's why I went for the no body shaping option. The added bonus of this is also that it just is easier to knit because I'm not gonna have to increase anywhere, so I can just knit kind of like a tube before all of the sort of straps and so on have to be shaped. But yeah, really loving it so far. I can't wait to have this one, and there's something for me about fingering weight summer tops that just screams my name. I don't know why. It's counterintuitive, maybe because they take longer to knit, but I just love the idea of a nice sort of like summer fiber blend with fingering weight top. Just feels really special. And yeah, that's all I have to say about this one. So Petal drop camisole. Hopefully I will make progress with it. And that's all for my active works in progress so far. Don't really want to talk about the ones that are kind of like lounging around, like single socks or things that I've started, because I'm not working on those anyways at the moment. But I do have a few small acquisitions that I want to share just briefly, because it's not that I have much to say yet since I haven't worked with them. But when I was in Oxford at the Oxford Yarn Shop, I also not only picked up the yarn for the scarf, but also my first ball of Mondim, which is one of the yarns from Retrosaria Rosa Pomar. And the Mondim is, I think, 100% merino, no, 100% Portuguese wool, 100 grams, 385 meters. And I absolutely love the label. I've always been eyeing the yarn because the label is so cute. And I also absolutely love these colors. They just scream summer and summer sunset to me. So I think there will be a pair of socks in my future. What I haven't decided yet is if this is going to be a shorty sock or a full length kind of sock. I haven't made shorty socks before, but I feel like they could be nice for spring and autumn. Because anyways, in the UK it hasn't really gotten hot yet. It's mostly raining or kind of cloudy like today. So I think the weather here is way more conducive to knitting year round with wool. So that's one thing that I picked up. Another thing that I got is I participated in a giveaway by Olivia and Oliver Fibres, and I got a voucher for that. I won one, which was very nice. So I put it towards pre-ordering from her Endless Autumn, Eternal Autumn, well, either of the two collection, and the yarn came in. I have a third skein there, and this is the colorway Autumn Dusk. Alright, I should have maybe said this colorway I think also only has a number, but it is M96. Just to be sure that all the info is there. But back to this yarn. So this is the Merino Fingering by Olivia and Oliver Fibres, which is this really nice autumnal variegated yarn with lots of kind of like rose, pink, brownish red colors. A little bit of like a tint of like grayish green up here, I would say. Some cream colors, and then you have these absolutely gorgeous speckles as well throughout. So I have a third one, and I think I will at some point pick up a mohair and decide what sweater I want to make with it. I'm not super decided yet, but I think it'll be something nice. So that's everything I have to talk about yarn and knitting wise, but I do always have a little bit of a favorites or update section at the end, which I wanted to get to now because I enjoy talking about that as well, and I also always enjoy watching these sections when other YouTubers talk about their, I don't know, monthly favorites or something. So maybe I do updates first and then favorites. Basically, I think one of the big reasons I fell off the knitting wagon was that there were quite some developments related to my writing. And I talked about this in my last video, but just to briefly summarize, I have been writing for a few years. I write contemporary romantic comedies, or comedy. I've only written one, but over the past 2.5 years I've been working on it, writing it, editing it, and last autumn I got into kind of mentorship where a very, very kind and great author, writer helped me shape my book a bit more. And this gave me also definitely quite some confidence in it, that I should maybe try, finding an agent with it. So basically, the general deal is that at least in the English and American market, if you want to traditionally publish your book, it's not so straightforward to do this by yourself. You kind of need an agent to then get in touch with the publishers. So getting an agent is a really big step on the kind of like journey to traditionally publishing your book. And it's not easy. You have to query and send your materials and hope that they get to the right person at the right time, that they vibe with it. But long story short, I started querying in February as part of this mentorship competition as well. And I got an agent. I signed with my agent at the end of March. She is great. She's UK based as well. We haven't met in person yet, but we've been talking obviously about all things related to my book, and I've been editing my book with her. We've gone through 2 edit rounds so far to bring it even more up to kind of like into shape, and that's been taking a lot of my time as well because I'm excited about it. I want to get it to the next stage and make the book better, and it takes a lot of not just time itself but also mental energy, because I feel like that's where all my creativity has been flowing, and it's great because it's something that I've been pursuing and something that I've been dreaming of, but it also just takes up a lot of space in my life, obviously. And yeah, so that was the development. I have an agent now, which still feels very crazy to say, but cheers to me, I guess. I don't know. It still feels weird, but very, very nice, obviously. So what we are doing right now, again, editing the book, I'm kind of reshaping it according to feedback that she gave me, and we are hoping to submit it to publishers soon. So then the next step is to kind of, for her, that's not my job, this is why we work together now, right? For her to pitch it to publishers or to editors, to then see if any of them want to acquire the rights for their publishing house. And that could happen or it could not happen. It doesn't always happen, obviously. There's still so many hurdles, but I feel like definitely a lot has happened and I'm a lot closer to that dream since the last time I spoke to you. So I wanted to update you on that because it's a huge piece of my life and it's a huge piece of news, and I always enjoy also talking about my writing on here. So yeah, that's the deal with that. I also started writing a new story. This was when I started querying. It was mentally challenging, I would say, because basically you're putting yourself out there and you're putting your work out there that you've worked on for a while. Doesn't really matter how long. In my case, it was at that point a bit over 2 years. And it's something so personal. I mean, I'm not writing about myself in the book, but obviously a lot of things that I think about and a lot of myself still flows into this 90,000 word, 300 page document, right? So it's kind of scary to put it out into the world and basically have people tell you, didn't vibe with it, not my style, I'm not so sure about the dialogue. So it's not great, right? Like, I honestly feel like to me it felt worse than job rejections because for some reason it feels more personal. I don't know. Anyways, it wasn't the easiest time, but I guess with anything that is highly rewarding, it can also be quite a risk to take or make you really vulnerable. So one of the advices that I've read before was that sometimes it's great to start writing something new as you're querying, because at least this way you have some process under your control, right? As you're querying, you're mostly waiting. Agents can take 12 weeks to read your work, maybe even more. A lot of them won't get back to you, so you're feeling like you're just throwing that big thing you created into the void and you might not hear back. So it's not easy really, and it did help me a lot to start writing something new. It was a bit of a challenge as well, because you go from this very well-developed writing style, kind of more polished, everything is concise and way more thought out work, to the blank page again, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what is the story, who are these characters, what am I writing? And it's just a big trash fire basically. And yeah, I think I would call myself a little bit of a perfectionist maybe, so it's really not easy to just be fine with how bad a first draft can be, but I'm trying my best to work on, or like accept that a first draft, no matter how shitty it is, has to exist before I can polish it up and make it nice. Anyway, so I've started working on that. It's also a rom-com again, but this time the first one is more, so the quote-unquote finished one is about a scientist who goes to a summer conference, and all sorts of things happen there. So it's really sciencey, New York focused rom-com. Whereas the one that I'm working on right now, obviously I don't have the vibes so defined yet because I'm still figuring those out, but I basically wanted to go on holiday in my writing. So it is a road trip that is set in Europe, and the main character, I'm still kind of changing my mind with what her job is, but what I do know is that she's a knitter. I really wanted to have a main character who's a knitter, who thinks about yarn and who likes to just knit away. So she's that. And yeah, we're gonna go and see what happens from here. But I've been talking about my book so much now, I wanted to talk about some other books as well. First of all, this is probably mostly interesting to you if you are also a writer. I picked this up yesterday because one of my favorite podcasts keeps recommending it. The podcast is The Shlt No-one Tells You About Writing, which is hosted by 2 literary agents and an author who basically give you all sorts of advice related to writing, publishing industry, and it's been super, super important, valuable to me in preparing all my querying materials as well, because it's a great resource. But they keep talking about this book, and this is Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, sorry, and it's from the 90s. It's a book about writing essentially, and so far I've only read about 60 pages of it, but I read them basically in one go yesterday after I bought the book, and I really love it. It's kind of like, it's someone talking about writing in a really fun way. The sections that I just read were about, well, I can show you. Shitty first drafts. Very important right now. And the next chapter was about perfectionism. So it feels very relevant to me right now. And it's really like having someone tell you very kindly that it's okay to write shitty at first. I also like how much focus this puts on the writing process itself, because I think you can get a bit stuck in, I don't know, wanting to pursue publication, sort of external validation, whereas this book really tries to focus on, okay, try to figure out what the process, how it works like for you, how it can be fun, because that's in the end the most rewarding bit that you can get and that you have control over, and I completely agree with it. So if you're also a writer, would definitely recommend it. I think first I actually heard about it on Ted Lasso, because I think Coach Beard says at some point to Ted Lasso, Bird by Bird, and it was a reference to this book. So highly recommend it. And then another book that I read recently was How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwang, who is a screenwriter and director and has recorded, uploaded many great films, short films on YouTube. And I found them when I was a teenager, watched a lot of them because she kind of made very short adaptations of a lot of my favorite YA and other books. And it's great to see that she came out with her own novel. So I was very excited about it, and I pre-ordered it and read it straight away, and I really enjoyed it. I think you can see her screenwriting influence a bit from it. She does a great job of making it dual perspective. I'm not always the biggest fan of dual perspective, but in this one I think it worked really well because the perspective switches often enough that it doesn't feel repetitive and that you get a really clear view of what each of these characters thinks in each scene, what they have to lose in each scene as well. So it was very gripping. The situation is quite tricky in this one. I'm not going to say too much about it. I don't know if it's actually mentioned on the cover. No, it's not mentioned in the blurb, so I'm not going to say it. They're basically the two characters that are kind of like the couple that everything revolves around. They have very, very messy and tricky and heartbreaking background history. And they meet again when the one main character, she's a YA author, and one of her book series gets adapted into a TV show, and she's going to be involved in the screenwriting process, and she meets this guy again who is a professional screenwriter, and they're together in the writer's room trying to adapt the series, trying to be vulnerable, because that's what you have to be to create good things, I guess. And in the meantime, they also have to work through what happened back then. So would definitely recommend. Very great, spicy if you like that as well. And I liked it a lot. Then two other books. These books I also read recently, but there's the new Emily Henry, but I feel like this is probably being talked about enough, and I actually want to talk about some other books that I really enjoyed. One of them is A Collision of Stars by Georgia Stone, which is an indie published book that you can buy on, I think, mainly on Amazon actually, as an ebook. And it's set in London over a summer, kind of like a London bucket list. Two people that become friends over ticking off the bucket list and then more. And I really liked it because it felt so European. I read a lot of American romance novels, and this one, I don't know, there's something about indie books that I like because they don't have to follow certain conventions in terms of length, or they seem more, I don't know, there are more possibilities, I would say, maybe. And A Collision of Stars was great. I loved the style. It was really funny, but also hit kind of my heartstrings just in the right moments. And it's a really great story. I would 100% recommend it, especially if you want to have a bit of London vibes, London summer vibes in your reading. And then last, but very much not least, is another indie book that I found, well, not that I found, that's wrong, another indie book on Amazon, which is called What Happened to Helen Rochester. This book is by Claire Gilmore. Claire Gilmore has published a book in past October, called Love Interest, which was one of my favorite books last year. That one was a rom-com. What Happened to Helen Rochester is a kind of cozy mystery blended with college slight romance. I think it's a bit of an odd mix, but it worked very well for me. And I just love the way she writes and comes up with stories. And I think she published this book independently because it doesn't really fit with the rom-coms. The rom-coms are traditionally published. And it felt so foreign to me because it's set in a college and around these like fraternities, Greek life, I guess, so sororities, fraternities, and death happens, and then the main character, who is a law student, has to investigate, and at the same time she's also kind of trying to navigate a weird like friendship breakup that happened with her best friend, but then her best friend comes back and she thinks maybe she has feelings for him, and yeah, it was a really great mix. It kept me on the edge of my seat and without being too spooky, which is the balance that I love, and very enjoyable, and I loved the romance bit of it as well. And she has become one of the authors that I would probably just buy the books without knowing what they're about, because I just really like her taste and her style. So those are the books that I've been wanting to talk about. Let me know if there was anything nice that you've read in the past month that you would, or past months that you would recommend. Just honorable mentions again. I said the new Emily Henry, which is Funny Story, is here. I read this and I really liked it. Bride by Ailey Hazelwood was great as well, and I'm really excited that the new Ailey Hazelwood will be coming out in 10 days, I think, from now, which is again a more like STEM contemporary romance related one. And then I also read my first Kate Claiborne, Georgie All Along. Would also really recommend this, but I've talked about so many books now that I'll kind of put a pin in it here. Hopefully I can talk about a few more books next time. I'll try my best not to make it into such a long break again. But in any case, thank you so much for stopping by. If you have any questions about things that I talked about, please drop them in the comments. I will also make sure to put as much information as possible in the description box, show notes, whatever. And also will link my Ravelry and my Instagram account. I have a new Instagram account now, so I'm trying to keep kind of my knitting stuff a bit separate from all the writing stuff, because I know that not everyone is interested in both, and it also just feels weird to be very nitty gritty about knitting and then do very writing specific things in the same account. So they're separate ones now. I'll link the knitting one below because that's probably why you're here, but on that knitting one I have also linked the other one. So thank you so much for stopping by. I would love to chat to you guys, and I hope you are having a great start. Well, it's not summer yet, end of your spring, I guess, and I'll see you soon, hopefully, in another episode. Bye.